Welcome, everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started. Hi, I'm Mimi Kravitz. I'm the Chief Impact and Growth Officer at Jewish Federations of North America. And it is both an honor and a responsibility to set the stage for this session on the evolving landscape of Jewish life in the wake of October 7th. The past year has been marked with intense pain, which has also fueled a powerful surge in Jewish connection and engagement. Our Jewish Federations of North America survey of Jewish life post-October 7th offered valuable insights and helped quantify a trend many of you have experienced firsthand in your communities. First, the survey revealed that most Jews have been deeply engaged with the war, with close to 96% following it closely and 92% reporting strong emotional impacts, a figure that got even higher in March than in our survey immediately following the events of October 7th. It revealed that Jews are now twice as likely as the general public to express safety concerns and 3 times as likely as the general public if they wear visible signs of their Jewish identity. And it revealed that despite 91% of Jews supporting Israel in this war, discussing it publicly has become increasingly fraught, with many feeling safer speaking within like-minded circles. The data also revealed that 43% of our Jewish community sought more involvement in Jewish life, including both deeply engaged individuals and those newly inspired to participate, which we identified as the surge. The largest populations in this surge are young adults 18 to 24 without kids and midlife adults 55 to 75 without kids at home. But people are surging across all age demographics and across all geographies. These findings highlighted a growing need to better understand the experiences and motivations of those in the surge. To explore this trend further, we have recently conducted qualitative interviews in partnership with Rosov Consulting, starting with parents of elementary school to high school age children who joined the surge. Although we are still in the early stages and have only spoken to this one population segment to date, we have many more planned, and the insights gathered over the past month have been enlightening and worth sharing. We believe that we will come up with incredible insights by continuing these conversations, as we must understand what is going on for these people who are seeking connection so that we can meet them in this moment and consider what it would mean to engage them in our community long term. 2 overall themes emerge. Actually, let me share the first before this slide, which is that there is an incredible diversity of experience. While the outcome of increased involvement was shared, individual experiences varied widely. The initial catalyst for this drive towards engagement ranged from happening in the immediate aftermath of October 7th and the shock at what happened in Israel, to seeking out engagement after a particular anti-Semitic incident or general feeling of rising anti-Semitism in people's country and their communities at home. The duration and nature of engagement has also differed widely, with spanning from continuous connections with established organizations. You have seen them at your synagogues, at your day schools, in your JCCs, to more personal Jewish connections and conversations with people sharing that this is something that's taking place in their homes and within existing friend groups. In response to this pain and abandonment as a driver. So what we know is the reason that people are surging, the reason they're showing up, actually comes from the pain that our community is in right now. A common theme was the lingering pain, shock, and disillusionment following October 7th, which disrupted feelings of general safety and trust for so many in our Jewish community. This led to a reevaluation of relationships, prompting some to distance themselves from certain individuals, from organizations where they had long-held ties, and then they sought to seek or deepen others. This reassessment extended to American political leadership, to non-Jewish friends, to secular institutions like schools and clubs, and at times, Jewish and Israeli leadership and organizations. Parents, regardless of their children's ages, and we had parents with 2-year-olds and 4-year-olds expressing significant concern about the environment on college campuses, not only because of the immediate situation of our students, but because of a deep sense of abandonment from our colleges and universities. In response to this pain, parents expressed 2 critical needs as part of their seeking engagement. The first was around educational resources. There's a desire for both children and adult education, for our own knowledge and learning within the community, as well as tools to help non-Jewish friends understand Israel and anti-Semitism better. And the second most consistent theme around need is communities with shared views. Most people we spoke to in the surge are seeking spaces with like-minded individuals, whether through aligned organizations on Israel and domestic politics, synagogues and temples with good fit communities and leadership, social media channels with people like them, small local gatherings, and informal friend networks. And these are important connections for people to feel safe and in conversation with communities who see eye to eye with them, even as we aspire to connect them in unity with our larger community. While these conversations are still unfolding, it is clear that hearing from those in the surge can provide deeper insights to guide our collective response beyond the initial data. In addition to talking to people over the last few months, we have engaged with over 30 major Jewish organizations to understand the ways in which this surge is manifesting in our Jewish institutions. Knowing that much of the surge is happening in personal and interpersonal spaces, we are inspired to also see the consistent rise in participation in Jewish communal institutions in different ways. And we saw 7 different discrete trends across these institutions that I'm going to share briefly with you, and you will hear more about from our leadership across institutions today. The first is around mental health. There is a demand for emotional and community support that has risen by the psychological toll of the last year, and this often is specifically people looking for support around the stress caused by our current moment of anti-Semitism. Jewish education. Participation in Jewish learning from early childhood programs to adult learning has notably increased across the board. I am not going to read all the statistics on the screen that we gathered, but I invite you to look at them and realize the number of people that are showing up across different kinds of Jewish communal institutions right now for Jewish learning. Spirituality. There has also been an increase in participation in Jewish rituals like Shabbat and holidays. And we saw this in our communal institutions, and we heard about it in our conversations. People who haven't celebrated Shabbat in their homes before, hosting neighbors in their homes to build community and connection to Jewish life in this moment. Israel engagement. Programs focused on Israel education, not surprisingly, especially for teens, young adults, and middle-aged community members, have seen a surge with people seeking knowledge to aid their conversations and their advocacy, as well as to find spaces to speak openly without risk and to ask their hard questions. Volunteerism and cultural events. Organizations report sustained attendance growth at Jewish culture events and an increase in volunteerism. And this is particularly true, we understand, among young adults who report seeking connection beyond political conversations. Philanthropy. You all know donations have risen, especially those directed towards crisis and security efforts. The Jewish Federations of North America Israel Emergency Campaign, raising now close to $860 million, is just one example of this. Participation in philanthropy programs around women's philanthropy and young leadership philanthropy are also seeing unprecedented interest and enrollment. Job applications. Almost all organizations that reported to us reported that more people are applying for positions in their Jewish communal organizations, trying to align their professional lives with their Jewish identities and seeking ways to make an impact. This is true across all different kinds of roles, from marketing and operations to camp counselors who have applied at higher rates in this moment. And it also seems to be the case that there is a rise in employee retention of current employees who are called to stay in this work, even though there has been an incredible amount of exhaustion and burnout in this last year. And even though we know there have been some crisis-related departures, by and large, the trend is towards retention and staying in this critical work in this moment. Some organizations, particularly some local synagogues, noted a post-10/7 spike in interest that waned over time. A few organizations, particularly some smaller local organizations, did not see the surge of new people, though have seen more need from their existing communities for the services they offer. And limited capacity, insufficient staff, and lack of engagement professionals sometimes has constrained organizations' ability to respond, suggesting places for our strategic support and investment. But all this data highlights a crucial shift. Jewish engagement is rising, driven by both familiar and new participants. And our team's work at JFNA will be to deepen this research, to continue to share these findings broadly, and to support all local Jewish communities and national organizations as they adapt to this new reality. Today we will hear from 4 leaders with firsthand experience on these challenges and opportunities. I will introduce our first speaker, who will subsequently bring up our panel of esteemed CEOs and leaders across different areas of Jewish life. So I am now honored to introduce Rabbi Elliot Cosgrove, whose voice has resonated powerfully in times of both celebration and crisis. Rabbi Cosgrove is the senior rabbi at Park Avenue Synagogue in New York City, one of the most vibrant congregations in North America. His leadership reflects a commitment to nurturing Jewish identity, education, and communal strength. He is an esteemed scholar and author, contributing to contemporary Jewish thought. He also serves on the boards of notable organizations, including UJA Federation of New York and American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. I truly enjoyed reading Rabbi Cosgrove's most recent work, For a Time Such as This, on being Jewish today, which makes him an essential voice for navigating Jewish life in this moment. His insights are rooted in Jewish tradition and Torah and forward-thinking perspectives, and are especially relevant as we address the surge in Jewish engagement and its accompanying challenges. Please join me in welcoming Rabbi Elliot Cosgrove.
Boker Tov, everyone. Good morning. Can everyone hear? So I'm going to play both player and coach in this moment, both rabbinically framing the data, Mimi, and thank you so much. Let's thank Mimi for all she does. And then turn it over to our distinguished panel, whom I will introduce momentarily. So Mimi, thank you, and thank you to all your colleagues at JFNA. My task as a rabbi is not so much data analysis, but to function on a pastoral mode and whether someone has a simcha or a sorrow as a congregational rabbi, and I see many of my colleagues here, it is an opportunity to write the first line of what we are experiencing. A loved one is afflicted with illness, a child announces an engagement. What is the story we are going to tell in light of the life experience we are experiencing? The book that I read that Mimi graciously mentioned, For Such a Time as This, is my attempt to try to write the first chapter of the narrative that we are experiencing as American Jews at this moment, for such a time as this. The biblical spine of the book takes its cue from the book of Esther, which is a story of a Persian community in ancient Shushan who believed themselves to be living a comfortable life. Assimilated Esther, the heroine of the story, her name literally means to hide. She felt that by entering into the king's palace, she was able to ascend to the very heights of Persian power as queen, and the going was pretty good until that moment in time when the decree from Haman came down and the fate of the Jews was on the line. By way of an emissary, Mordecai, her uncle, communicates to her and says, don't think that you are going to escape with your life, and who knows, maybe it was for such a time as this that you've arrived at your station in life. For me, this call to Esther is a call of American Jewry right now, and I think, Mimi, your data confirms this. The idea that we have been called on in a moment of trauma to step up with our Jewish identities. For me, as a congregational rabbi, that is, of course, measured by way of tushes in the pews, philanthropy, people being, accidental activists, volunteerism, all of the categories that Mimi described. But it's also happening on a pastoral level in very quiet moments, traumatically, young parents wondering whether the Shabbat Shalom songs that their children are learning in Hebrew school, whether they can sing them when they're on the streets of Manhattan, where I serve. But it's also happening in quiet conversations, young couples who are on the fence of whether or not what the non-Jewish partner was going to convert, the decision of that person to lean into their Jewish identity in that moment. It's happening in philanthropy, of course. It's happening in a surge in rabbinic involvement in independent secular schools, an entire industry of being advocates for it's not just college campuses, it's also high schools. In any number of metrics, you're seeing an increased demand on Jewish communal professionals by way of an increased surge in Jewish communal life. The paradigm that I provide in the book, not from the book of Esther, but this week's Torah reading, which was referenced by many of our speakers in the plenary, is the difference between Genesis Jews and Exodus Jews. Now, I didn't come up with that distinction. My teacher and friend, Rabbi Daniel Hartman, used it for a different purpose, but I suggest that in last week's Parsha, we are given a Genesis formulation of Jewish identity. Abraham is called on by God to go forth to become a great nation, v'heyeh bracha, and you shall be a blessing. This is a positive assertion of Jewish identity. On the other hand, in the book of Exodus, the story begins, a new Pharaoh arose who didn't know Joseph, and the Jews are other, the Jews are different, the Jews might be a fifth column, a threat, and that is not the positive pull of Jewish identity, but that is the negative push of Jewish identity, that Jews circle the wagon. It's the Exodus expression of identity. And so we may or may not have been Genesis Jews in our practiced religion, in our civic religion, by any measure of how we identify Jewishly. prior to October 7th. But the contention of the book and my contention is that on October 7th, we all became Exodus Jews. We all understood our Judaism as defined by being other, our attachment to Israel and the pernicious and porous line between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, a new emergent identity that some wagged their finger and said, "I told you so," it was all there all the time, and some people woke up with a whiplash of where did this all come from? So I don't think October 7th was experienced the same way by everyone. I think that's a subplot of the last 402 days. And the other distinction that I'll make, and I think this will probably come up in our panel, is that the experience of October 7th and subsequent to it was felt differently by different generations. I think that I describe an actual conversation with the Maya conversation, the Gen Z non-Zionist community within the Jewish fold. And I feel that my experience has reflected Jews, many in this room perhaps, who were obviously traumatized and alienated by the events of October 7th, but another generation of the Jewish community was doubly alienated because they felt themselves to be alienated by what I call the OJC, what you are, what I am, the organized Jewish community, who, for reasons which we can get into, had made assent to the policies of this or that Israeli government to be the threshold test for participation in Jewish communal life. And so that generation, in the midst of this surge, also felt alienated by the very vehicles which were meant to engender Jewish identity. And so this is not a monolith. It's very, I'm skeptical of having a big, broad brushstroke because it's experienced differently by different people, which we'll get into. But the question ultimately is one and the same, which is prior to October 7th, one may or may not have defined oneself as a Genesis Jew. After October 7th, we all became Exodus Jews. The question that I face, that the distinguished panel faces, is how do we make sure and sustain the idea that our Jewish identities will be defined not by the hatred of others, but by the positive assertion of what it means to be a Jew. It was great to be a Jew on October 6th. It's still great to be a Jew today. How do we sustain that beyond the trauma and, please God, with the hostages released and the war abating, into the sacred work that all of us are committed to? So to lead us in this panel, this is like I wish I had my trading cards of Jewish heroes of mine. I'm not going to read, with your permission, your entire bios, but Amy Bressman is UJA Federation of New York immediate past president. Let's give it up for Amy. She has taken an active role in shaping the Jewish future as a responsibility and opportunity, leadership positions at AJ, the Joint, the Executive Committee, chair of JDC Israel, past chairman of a small synagogue named Park Avenue Synagogue, Wexner, amazing, Amy. David Siegelman, let's give it up for David. The founder and CEO of Moishe House. He launched Moishe House to be part of building something that would have a real impact on the global Jewish community and beyond, now in 6 continents. Amazing work, David. What an honor to be in your presence. Jeremy Fingerman.
Wow, Rabbi.
I feel like Bob Barker here of blessed memory. CEO of FJC, the Jewish camping in 2010, following a highly successful 20-plus year career in consumer foods industry. He is a graduate of Columbia and Harvard Business School, former chair of the Network of Jewish Communal Professionals, and a lot more. Jeremy, it's an honor to be in your presence. And Jennifer Mamlet, the acting president and CEO of JCC Association of North America, having served previously as executive vice president, doing amazing work leading JCCs all around the country. It's an honor to be in your presence, Jennifer. Thank you so much. Let's welcome our panel. So you've heard the data and you've heard the Torah, and you are actually the ones in the shetach, in the trenches, serving our people. So we didn't talk about this before, so Jeremy, you're not looking at me, so I'm going to call on you first.
I'm glad you did.
So Jeremy, does your experience in Jewish camping gel with what Mimi was saying? And it's okay, it's actually more interesting if it doesn't. So what are you experiencing in Jewish camping?
Well, I want to first start by saying I think Jewish camp is the Genesis Jews, that Genesis Judaism that you describe. Our data from this past summer really remarkable in matching what Mimi spoke to. We had actually a record level of participation among day camps and overnight camps, campers and counselors. We back to and reached and now exceeding pre-pandemic levels of participation, which is a huge comeback. So we did see that. In particular, we saw it among the college-age staff that had been burdened so much in the front line of, the conflict and the war on campus. They were seeking a place of healing and of joy and of respite, and that's what camp delivered this summer.
Okay. Thank you. And Jennifer, what are you seeing with JCCs?
Sorry to disappoint, but the data does bear out, so it's going to be a little less interesting. But the data bears out, particularly also in terms of adults 55 to 75 that Mimi talked about. We're seeing very much a surge there. We are seeing a surge across age groups, that's for sure. Our data is also showing that while there's some slight variation to size of JCC or geography, it's not enough to really make anything of it yet at this point. The piece that I would probably underscore, and I think because JCCs employ so many people, we have close to 50,000 professionals between our full-time, part-time, and seasonal staff. I would underscore some of the data that Mimi started to talk about in terms of the surge for Jewish communal professionals, and I would underscore the impact. So both from a mental health standpoint, when you picture the average person working in a JCC who is experiencing all of this themselves and confronting the reality of the people that are coming to them for answers, for services, for programs. So that for sure. The other piece that I would just probably highlight or underline a little bit is what it means to keep our institutions safe and secure, both in reality and in perception. So when you have more people wanting to show up, it's really important that they're showing up to a space that they feel is safe. Sometimes that means actually seeing a visible increase in security, and sometimes it's people not wanting to see it, but to know that it's there. For JCCs that, as I like to say, serve everybody from babies to bubbies, depending on who's walking in the door, that's also going to change demographically. But the mental health, the programmatic needs, we're seeing a lot more interest in Israel and Jewish education, Israel and Jewish programming, and I will just close with what Jeremy said. I think we are seeing a strong desire. Mimi talked about the research is coming from a place. People are looking to come together out of anguish, out of fear, out of concern. But the antidote that they want is Jewish joy and pride and engagement. So really how to balance the education on the hard stuff with the joy that we can bring to their lives.
Thank you. Amy, you have a very broad portfolio, so you're seeing it all. So what are you noting and experiencing through the Federation eyes?
I feel very fortunate because I feel like I represent the mothership here. We're seeing the grantees who make our aspirational goals come true. And I think for all of you in the audience that work so hard at their local federation, to know that that's where people turned in this moment should give you great comfort and should make you feel really, really good about what you do. Because what we saw is each of the demographics that were represented are fully accurate, but we saw that people said that pain is not going to paralyze them. And we saw people show up to our rallies, to our missions. They want to be present. They want you to know that you can count on them. They want to stand up and be Jewish. So I think the answers will be very different for each of the demographics. I think the older crowd that was talked about are people whose kids have been out of the house a long time. They no longer saw the relevance of synagogue membership. Their kids had all been bar bat mitzvahed, and they found themselves alone in this moment of finding community. So I think we'll respond to that. I think in the generation that you talked about, we're seeing parents who don't have the language and the words to talk to their children about what has happened, and they view that as they have disappointed their children in that ability to help them see the world in a way that is very helpful. And in the 18 to 34 crew, we see people who want to go to Israel, but in a different way. They want to give of themselves there. They want to volunteer there. They want to make a difference. And I think they want to come back to their college campuses extremely empowered with knowledge. So I think the thread is the same for all the demographics, but it'll be incumbent upon us to provide different solutions that resonate with who we're offering. And the motto that we have when we're giving out our funding is no solutions for us without us. So we are checking every single time we think something works that it actually does work. And I think that you'll see from what you're going to hear in a moment that the actions of these incredible grantees have reflected making sure that they aren't doing business in the same way they did before October 7th, because the same solutions are not what are called for in this moment.
Thank you. David, can I just ask you one sentence before, your target demographic with Moshe House, is that 18 to 34?
Post-college, pre-settled down, so really more 21, 22 to mid-30s.
Okay, so what are you seeing with that demographic?
Yeah, there's been some real shifts. I think the biggest is that a decade, 2 decades ago, one's Jewish identity, volunteerism, engagement with Israel was a badge of honor. It was something you put on your resume, you would wear it loud and proud, and that today, particularly post-October 7th, there are social, professional, and even physical risks manifesting with all those things. And the young adults we work with are at a phase of life where they're trying to build their social networks, their professional engagement. And so it's a real challenge. People losing friends, not knowing how often do I speak up. Anytime I go online, there's a battle or a fight to be had. And when do I do that? When do I sort of just step back and not engage? It's why we're seeing, for us, the spikes are coming from immersive experiences, the opportunities to get away in Jewish environments. The Jewish summer camps for adults that we run, the numbers were much larger this year amongst the learning retreats as well. One-on-ones with rabbis, trying to understand why did I feel that way on October 7th and October 8th. And just to give an example, we had a recent board meeting in Houston. We were with the residents, and one of them is in residency for pediatric residency, and she, after October 7th, wore a pin that said, "Ask me about anti-Semitism," and had pieces about Israel on her own personal social media. She got written up by someone else in the program, suggesting that she be removed from the program, claiming that she was supporting genocide, and as such, isn't qualified and broke the... So she had to go through an entire process with the program. She was found not guilty of anything, and what that leaves her with is, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this. This is not a healthy, good environment. So those challenges are very real, and we're also seeing a lot of folks who felt really strong and comfortable in their in particular, sort of the liberal or progressive environments and communities that have felt incredibly abandoned and alone and not sure where they go and where they sit and what they say. So it is bearing out quite a bit.
Yeah, and there are different forms of anti-Semitism, right? There's a kind that comes at the end of a fist, violence, verbal violence, graffiti, vandalism, and otherwise. But then there's a sort of a higher, more genteel anti-Semit, like this incident that you're describing, a sense of marginalization, certainly felt by young people in progressive circles, not to mention a Hillel on campus that might, by dint of it being a Jewish organization, is thus thrust into a label of supporting, Zionism, genocide, and other, right? It comes in different forms, but it all slides from one to the next to the next. Jennifer, I want to pick up. You mentioned security costs and sort of the administrative toll of this moment in time, and I want to dig deeper on that and maybe open it up to the panel in the sense that everyone, not just Israel, was shocked by October 7th, but you, the leaders of American Jewish institutional life, I imagine the surge comes with both challenges, maybe opportunities. So I'm just wondering, what are you discovering, or what have you discovered as far as the challenges and opportunities of the surge?
I'll start with the opportunities. I'll start with the optimism. Some of them are really obvious, but they're also, it's what we do with it, right? This idea that I keep saying it's sort of like our tribal instinct is to want to be with people who we want to be with. We want to be with people, and this is what the data showed. People want to be with people where it's safe to have a conversation. It's safe to actually express themselves. One of the things that I've been talking about is that people have to actually practice, maybe for the first time, what it means to defend being Jewish or defend why they love Israel. For young people, whether really young or a little bit older, but people who are at the ages that you're talking about, David, they're finding their voice. They're finding their voice in a professional setting, in a social setting. They're building their network. In JCCs, we see this. And I keep saying, for the first time, they're actually hearing the words come through their vocal cords. And they have to be able to practice that. If you're practicing that for the first time, potentially with somebody with opposing views, that's really dangerous. You're going to quiet yourself really quickly. So one of the opportunities that I think we have inside of JCC certainly is to actually create both a safe space and a brave space for people to be able to comfortably speak to one another. And what I hope is that over time, more people will be able to be in those spaces that don't actually all agree on everything. If we could create that table that people can have constructive dialogue based on common ground, there to learn from each other, to really listen to one another. Oh man, would our communities be a lot better? The challenge is that, right? I just don't know that we're ready for it. And I think trying to create those spaces in a way that feels both responsible and to meet the moment is really hard. The other challenge that I will just, I think we're exhausted. We're exhausted. Mimi said retention is up even at a time when people are exhausted and there's a high rate of burnout. There is a high rate of burnout at every level. At the highest level, we're seeing it in our C-suites to the people sitting at the front desk who are dealing with everything coming through the door, literally. So how do we also keep them ready and wanting to lean into this and sort of keep them fortified in the way that we need to?
Thank you. David?
Yeah, I'm going to focus in on two opportunities here. One is that we started to see after October 7th and the surge is that, as an example, my grandparents had siblings that were Israeli. After the war, my grandparents came to the United States. my grandma's sister and my grandfather's best friend moved to Israel. So they grew up with this deep, deep connection, not just to Israel, but to Israelis. My parents, first cousins, real relationships their whole lives. For me, second cousins. I know my Israeli cousins, but we don't talk often. For that next generation, it is not so strong. And after October 7th, I reached out to my cousins, to my friends, the people I'm really close with in Israel. Well, if you don't have that, the information that next generation is getting is from social media and the news. Neither of those two sources are going to be particularly wonderful for our building of diaspora Jewry with Israel. And so I think we have a huge opportunity. We've seen what a powerful investment the Jewish community has made with the success of young people and their relationships with the land of Israel. I think that has to now translate out into Israelis. And what does it mean, and what is the investment for young people to be able to have deep, strong relationships with Israelis? And what are those pathways? Because they exist, and it's a huge opportunity, both because Israelis want it and diaspora Jews want it, and the human connection is critical. That's one. And the second is that we have a unique time for rich Jewish content. People are trying to understand their own feelings. Why do I care? How is this an Esther moment? The opportunity, we are seeing a big spike. We run a program called Jewish Learning Collaborative that allows, it was just with our staff, and now 35 organizations have signed on, where all the professionals and board members have the opportunity to do one-on-one Jewish learning with an educator they're matched up with. Well, over 50% of our staff is now doing it. They have questions. They want to understand more, and those hours spiked, and they've sustained since October 7th. And so I think that's another opportunity that we have as a Jewish community to go and build upon the cultural Judaism that exists.
Amy, and then Jeremy.
I think that for us at UJ Federation, this is a moment of opportunity. I think we have incredible sensitivity for the exhaustion that you expressed and for what it's like to be in the trenches. But I think, as Rabbi Cosgrove highlighted in his opening remarks, this is a moment where we have an opportunity not to be defined by the other. I think it's our moment and our opportunity to lean in to everything that our heritage offers. I believe that we have audiences at every single age level that is ready for that moment. And when we think about what is this October 7th, the tragedy of October 7th brought also a moment of reckoning and a moment of reflection. And I think we all should use it as a chance to reset the opportunities that we provide to the Jewish community of America. And we see it all the time as opportunity, not challenge.
One of the tragedies of post-October 7th was, as David sort of alluded to, it was the fraying of the connection between North Americans and Israelis. And I personally, my first grandchild born in December of 23, and you just can't get there enough because not many flights, very expensive. So, but what was amazing this summer was that we brought over 3,000 teens from Israel, many from displaced communities, funded through the Jewish Agency and federations, to come to be campers at camp, to offer them a moment of healing and of respite. And what happened was incredible because they gave a hug to the North Americans. We thought we were giving healing and respite to them. They came and gave strength to the North Americans who had faced whatever in their high schools and their public schools, on the campuses. And so the more we can connect one-to-one, person-to-person, between North Americans and Israelis, the better we're going to overcome this moment. And I think that helps to get at your sense of safe space and brave space, because now it's person-to-person. You can you're developing that relationship that will last, and I think provided strength to get through this moments.
I want to build on the last round and talk about the Jewish communal professional class for a moment, because I was actually surprised by Mimi's data that signaled both an increase in job applicants and sustaining of retention in the professional, and maybe now it's therapy, but it's been hard. It's been hard, and I'm a congregational rabbi, and as a pastor, there's no separation, right? When there's a loss in the community of an individual, we experience that loss as well. It's not out there, it's here. Obviously, we're professionals, but we feel that loss, and whereas there might be a distancing between Israeli Jewry and American Jewry, for many of us, for me, I'm playing defense on my WhatsApp of my nephew in Gaza and my family there and everything at the very time I'm trying to lead and advocate and be right, and it's exhausting. And I'm a congregational rabbi. You don't like what I say, join another shul. Well, except you. But I think about, like, if I were a Hillel director right now, I got my philanthropic base leaning right, I got my student body leaning left, I got skyrocketing security costs, I got to deal with the administration, the faculty, right? I went into this job to have a nice mixer on a Thursday night, and now, like, who needs this business? So I'm deeply concerned about the short-term effects, but Mimi has the data, but also the long-term effects of this moment. If I'm a 21-year-old right now deciding what I'm going to go into, I'll work for Deloitte. Why do I need to work for these Jews, given the headache? So I'm wondering what you're seeing, whether it's camping, JCCs, the choices, David, the young people that you're, or Amy, in the professionals of the Federation world. So why don't we begin with you, Amy? What are you seeing in the choices of the Jewish communal professional class?
This does give me a moment to say thank you to the two people in this room who I work the closest with on investing in the Joyful Judaism and capitalizing on the search, which is Hannah Grunberg and Deborah Joslow. And I want to do that because I believe that I have witnessed people who have worked for 25 hours a day for 13 months straight, and I don't know how they find the resource to come every day with their best selves to a job that used to be confined to maybe 10 hours a day that is now 19 hours a day, 20 hours a day. So I have an incredible appreciation for the resource and the inner power that they find to continually come to their job. So do I think when we look at these solutions for capitalizing on the surge that we need to be very cognizant of fortifying the structural infrastructure of these places? Absolutely, because everyone is fully exhausted. I combine that with us, we're exhausted. So it really is a time when you dig deep, you want to look back on this moment. We all want to be proud of our Esther moment and make sure that we did everything we possibly could right now. And does it require more things of your brain and your heart than you've ever been asked to do? I think it does. But I mean, I look at this group of 3 people, they're representative of the organizations that are in the field. They have found it. They continue to dig deep. They open summer camps when it was scary. JCCs are open. First I watched it during COVID, then I watched it again. Like, they're great. They're strong and they're great. And we all just have to have compassion for them and give them the support to keep on finding the resources that they have. Since I saw you last, you grew a big beard. I don't know if that's part of it, but whatever it takes. So, but I think that taking the time always to show appreciation for the people that are working so hard is part of our responsibility as well.
Very good, very good.
You heard it here first. Hug your rabbi. Jeremy, you mentioned the kids who are coming back to work at summer camp. Is any of this translating into, what are you seeing?
Well, two things I would point out. One, the exhaustion is true. Camp directors, exhausted, taking care of everything, got to the summer and reported back it was their best summer ever because they were back in a safe, joyous experience. And they were doing what they love to do, which is building positive Jewish identity and creating Jewish joy among their folks. They've come back more invigorated. Several already have approached me about capacity expansion. They're ready to go and to expand the number of kids they're serving, which is great. I'll tell you one other story, which is the reverse of the exhaustion. Maybe everybody's exhausted. A public school, high school assistant principal from Chicago has just resigned his position in Chicago to become a camp director in the DC area. Why is that? He has a master's in education, and he was fried from that experience, but he wanted to come back to work into the Jewish community. We're thrilled to have him, and I think that experience base, that new experience coming in that he'll bring will help not only his camp, but the field as well.
Jennifer.
Going back to your example of the Hillel director, the one thing that I want to point out, because I think we forget this, yes, it's the security and it's the donors and it's the students and it's the protests, and they still have to run that mixer. That's the thing, right? So you have to do all that other stuff and the stuff that you were doing before.
You actually went into the job
that
for.
You actually went into the job for, but now you have to, you want to do that, but you're doing that with all of the other things. So, and still needing to show up in the same way. So what I like to talk about is, Amy, I loved what you said, that I think 25 hours a day of work, which resonates. Let's just pretend for a minute that those in the Jewish communal world work 9 to 5. Ha ha ha, who does? But let's just go with me for a minute. It's actually not what's happening from 9 to 5. The more people I talk to, it's what's happening from 5 to 9. Because, Rabbi, it's what you said. Now we go home, and whatever we're dealing with at home, whether it's our own families, extended families, the roles that our friends, for some of us who I think in our social circles, people are turning to us as if we have answers. So it's like, it's constant, and the things that we're thinking about are really weighing on us. So by the time we get to 9 o'clock the next day, we're still sort of carrying that. The only other thing I think we've all talked about a little bit, there's more people applying to jobs. Like, I do think there are some people who are going to say in this moment, you know what, Dafka now, I want to be part of the Jewish community because I don't want to work in the law firm or in Deloitte where I can't express these things in my workspace. So it might be a time that people are coming in. My bigger concern is about what it means for leadership. So ultimately, like the people who at one time, the early career, the mid-career, who would have looked at leaders in their organizations and networks to say, like, I aspire to be that, right now we're looking at those roles saying, oh my, I am so glad I don't have to make those decisions. I don't know what I would do if I had to make those decisions. I could still stay in my lane. So that's something that I think we have to be really mindful about. I think we have to, as much as we segment our populations, I think we really have to be thoughtful about how we segment our professionals and where they are in their career, to think about how we support and fortify them and inspire them to not only stay in it now, but to go to the next stage.
Well, I do hope we get some folks out to Deloitte who are wildly successful, join our board, support the organization.
Amen, amen.
And I know who not to call when we're on the job recruitment circuit, but I think one of the things that we're seeing is that there's a important population who from October 7th feel, am I adding unique value at Deloitte? Is what I'm doing here replaceable by thousands of other people? And am I going to find unique value and meaning and contribution in the Jewish community because it needs me right now? we are seeing that quite a bit, where people are saying, this is my time. I didn't feel like I needed to do this because it was being done. Things were good. And I think when our backs are against the wall, it also creates space for people to step up and step in ways that they didn't see themselves, they didn't feel themselves in a way prior to that, and we are seeing those people. Now the question is, how do we utilize it? How do we build on those strengths and find places where they can shine, where they can come into the community? I mean, lots of conversations of people calling saying, hey, amazingly qualified people, including one from Deloitte last week who said, I want to make this switch into the Jewish community. The truth is, I don't know where they go. I don't know professionally. On a lay leadership level, I think that there are opportunities, but they want to do more. They're looking for that career switch as well. And so I think we do have to find ways to be able to plug them in and place them. And I think the other part of it is that this is a time where people want to feel like they're part of something bigger. The visceral reaction to October 7th led so many of us to feel connected not just to our now Judaism, but to the generations before. Oh my God, I understand what anti-Semitism can actually look like. I thought it was gone. I thought we were making a big deal out of nothing. And I now feel connected to past generations and to my Judaism and to being part of building the future of the Jewish world in a way that I didn't know, I didn't feel, and I couldn't explain before. And I actually feel like I need to be part of something much bigger, not just for the now, but for the future. It's a lot of amazing talent. It's a lot of amazing talent.
So just in the spirit of disclosure, I have a niece who works at Deloitte, and I have no idea what they do there, but I'm like, man, she should really be a rabbi, and she works at Deloitte. Maybe that's the person who called you. So I want to ask maybe a controversial, possibly an incoherent question right now. Is everyone playing in the sandbox nicely right now? Meaning, one narrative, and I don't know if this gels with what Mimi's saying, is we're being othered by the world. We're circling the wagons. This is a time for all hands on deck to find our Esther moment, to pool resources, and to fight wherever we stand together. Okay, that's one possibility. But another possibility is ideologically and institutionally, everyone's making kiddush on their own, right? That you got people from the left, people from the right, you got, generally speaking and historically speaking, not all Jews get along. And so I'm just wondering, within the ecosystem of Jewish communal life, is this one big tent? Or is this a lot of small tents right now that you're seeing either in your respective organizations or if you want to opine on the Jewish world as a whole? David, I don't think I've called on you first yet, so I'll go start with you.
I was noticing that. That was what I was taking my note on. But I think it's a really, really critical question. And I actually think it has... It goes beyond the Jewish community. The generation we work with, Gen Z and coming into it, it is a much more curated lifestyle than previously. There is not this sense of you take the good with the bad. If there's any bad, you are out. It has to be like 100%, and that goes for how we're consuming all sorts of things. Our television, our music, our food. I mean, it is just a curated experience. So then when we try to extrapolate that into, okay, we're going to have a big Jewish tent where there's going to be all sorts of voices. They're like, you know what, I'm going to take my 7 voices that I like and do our thing over here because that really is what resonates for me and makes me feel good. I lose the wind in my sails by having to listen to this nonsensical, demonized view that's the other. And so I think we're feeling that as a Jewish community, but I don't think it's exclusive to the Jewish community right now. And that I do think we would be better served focusing on strengthening our core than going and seeking out all the people we think should be kicked out. And that is, there's a lot better energy spent on the joy, the learning, the engagement, the celebration, and make that core so vibrant and so exciting that people want to be a part of it, rather than spending the time negotiating what different people should get kicked out for because they posted 3 months ago and liked something that their cousin said, and having that be the structure of the conversation. So yeah, that's where at least my head is at with it.
Jeremy, what are you seeing?
It's remarkable. What I see is people still working together, let's say across denominations, across affiliations, in ways that I think are reflective of that the challenge is on all of us, on everyone's experiencing it. And at least what I see from our field within Jewish Camp and is really a sharing of resources, of sharing of what's working, what's not working, in a way that's helping lift the entire field. And I see it, I feel like I see it here, that people want to be together. People are coming up, they're showing up because they want to be together. We may not agree on everything, but we're listening and we're together. That's the way we'll get through this. Will it stay? I don't know.
Thank you. Amy, you self-identify, the mothership, as it were, federation. So what are you observing within the sandbox?
So I'm happy that you framed my response in that way, because I'm just going to address the organizations, most of which I believe were born in New York City. So we have the home of every alphabetical 3 letters that you can think of. They were made in New York. So I think that what we're really trying to navigate is making sure that each organization stays mission aligned. And I think we are doing a better job than we've done before of pulling together groups and collaborative responses. This is a moment which, as you can imagine, you want to appear to your funders as the most relevant organization. Totally get that. But it's a time when you have to maybe put that in the back pocket and see how together can we solve this particular challenge that we're facing as a Jewish people. And I'm watching over the course of my time at UJ a willingness to do that is different than the past. So I think it's honoring people and organizations who want to remain relevant and important and the problem solver in this moment, but still understanding that we're going to do better if we take a problem and try to solve it together. So it's kind of both.
I'm happy to follow that because, Amy, I totally agree with you. I think we are seeing partnership up locally for sure. I do think that there's in the same way that the data is showing that individuals are looking to be with like-minded people, I think organizations are looking for like-minded allies because it is so hard. And I don't think this is a time that organizations should be competing in front of funders, and I would hope that funders would be, if I may be so bold, to say, to try to remove the conditions that made us compete to begin with. I think organizations need to model, David, to your point. I think we have to model what it looks like to sometimes open the tent a little bit wider. We have to sit inside of a tent sometimes that is open enough to allow all voices to be in it, even when it's uncomfortable. And I think the more organizations partner, I'll say continentally and locally, if there's a Jewish person who doesn't find their place at a JCC, I would love for that JCC to be able to point them to another organization locally where they might find what they're looking for. Not for everything, but maybe for that one thing that they need that they can't get here. And we can't do that if we don't know each other. That's why these gatherings become so important. It's both the formal and informal engagement that people are looking for. So I would also just say, I think, for us in JCCs, it's sort of easy. Even in our formal spaces, there's informal connections happening all the time that we can see and we can observe. But I think we can all do that in different ways, and I think that's the stuff that we have to lean into. And I would say I'm optimistic even on that. Do I think everybody's playing nicely? To answer the question directly, no, but I think enough of us are that we're going to keep expanding that circle.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more round here. Amy, I've trying to remember the vocabulary. Either your committee at Federation started out as the Surge and then morphed to Joyful Judaism, or Joyful Judaism, and then which one was it?
Started Joyful.
Started Joyful.
Ended Capturing.
Okay. And I guess my question is, this language, this lexicon that we are developing about the Surge, October 8th Jews, Great Awakening, whatever, it signals A, that it's something temporary, and B, that it is in response to trauma. And so whatever we call this session, and whatever we call our various funding committees, please God the hostages will be released, please God the hostilities will abate, and we want to sustain the tale of this moment, right? I think, hopefully, please God, all of us would choose to live in a world without the sorrows of the hour.
Amen.
Let's just take that as a given. Period, full stop. How do we extend this as leaders beyond this moment?
I think this is exactly the question that we are grappling with in our committee in giving away our funding, because it is way beyond this moment. I think when I speak of opportunity, I think we were given yet another chance in which to present to Jews in our communities all of the value of Jewish life, Jewish tenets, Jewish literacy, what it means to be part of a Jewish community. So what we're trying to do is really study what are those things that we can offer that will make this be beyond 2024. And we're doing this based on 3 criteria. The first one I told you, we're doing nothing for us without us. So we're making sure that solutions that we offer, are people in the room who are going to receive those solutions say they resonate with them. The second thing we're taking a hard look at is, I think that maybe David mentioned these immersive experiences. When you have something that goes beyond a single class, a single moment, and can take yourself out of into Jewish time and space and see the relevance of that, that is a long-lasting memory and part of creation of what you want to be inside. So those are the 2. And then the third is we're really looking at what is the right solution for each demographic, and absolutely saying it is not the same thing for each of the groups in which we deal with. So these are our guiding principles. Every funding decision we're making with those 3 principles, because while this is the Esther moment, the goal of our funding is to make the Esther moment be an Esther lifetime. So we absolutely think about that all the time.
I'll just go through. Jeremy.
Well, nicely said, and I really think that it's incumbent on us to promote this idea of positive Jewish identity, positive connection to a Jewish community, connection to Israel. We do that now. Maybe we've got more people coming seeking, but it's we have to offer a quality product. A quality product that's going to last that builds pride in being Jewish, feels a connection to Israel, a lasting connection to Israel, and is imbued with joy. Genesis, the joy of being living a full Jewish life. I think that's really what all of us are hoping to achieve.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that I think we have a lot of answers already in front of us. I think we have to also look back at the things that we know work. In the JCC world, I talk a lot about investing in family engagement, families with young children, investing in the JCC Maccabi Games, which this summer were more joyful, more pride-filled, more pride-building. I mean, we all stood there like crying, saying we, the leaders, didn't know how much we needed this. So I think we have the answers in front of us. I love the word surge for what it means in this moment, but I do worry that it implies that it's temporary. And I keep talking about this tail and what are we doing to extend it and to see this as a turning point, not a moment in time.
David, how do we extend the tail?
Well, right now we're still in it. I think it's important to I mean, 10/7 is not a historical moment. We are in it. There are hostages. There's war. There is so much happening right now that it is not behind us in any way. And I wish this wasn't the case, but I think it serves us well in that as Jews, trauma is in our DNA, in our bones, and I think we can also look historically. I love how you opened it up with a story of Jewish perseverance and learning, and how are we looking back at our own history and saying, this is who we are, and who do we want to be? And we have the human capital. The energy is there. We have the resources. We are so fortunate in those ways. So then the question is, how can we be bold in building a Jewish life, Jewish relationships, vibrant Jewish future? I know it. We can, and we've done it before, and we'll do it again.
Thank you. Friends, a panel of amazing leaders. To Mimi for your steady leadership in all that you do. And you want the closing word?
Well, so I do want to thank the incredible panelists that we heard from today, because this is a tremendous group who is doing this work day in, day out in the field in such important ways. I find the framework inspirational that each of us was put here in this moment for such a time as this. And we have amazing leaders across this room. And so I do want to suggest a few things that the data and the conversation says maybe all of us can do. So there are people in some cases waiting in line to join our institutions, and they continue to need our investment and our support. Our professionals, as you heard, are staying in it but burning out, and they need to hear that we appreciate what they are doing. And all of us are members of a Jewish community locally. There are people showing up who haven't been there before, who don't feel comfortable, and you turning and welcoming somebody new will make a huge difference in making sure that we extend this surge into the long term. We can all take on a leadership role right now. So thank you for being here today. Lunch is downstairs in M4. And we are asked to go there quickly because security is going to come around on this floor before the upcoming plenary with President Herzog. So we ask that after we wrap, we move quickly. Thank you all.